So we adopt that when we feel like it, and then put it down. You know, if we get fed up with one another, then I go back to my place and you go back to yours.
Okay, so the term step, in the way you're using it, is that we step towards it when we want to, not necessarily in the legal term of step.
Yeah, and then we step back when we're ready as well.
Because I was thinking of like stepbrother and stepfather, and that's what I was thinking of.
Okay.
Necessarily where you're not the biological father or biological mother of a child in the relationship, but you're not using it that way.
I am. I'm using it both ways.
Okay.
I'm using it both ways, and the reason why I'm using it both ways is because traditionally, step parents were with the two people being married. They had to be married. So one person, two people were within a family relationship. One dies, or one leaves, or one gets divorced, and then what happens was the other parent then marries somebody else. Just like in Cinderella, or even in the Bible with Joseph. Yeah, and I'm using that. I used the fairy story deliberately because the stepmother was given a role of being like a wicked stepmother, and that was kind of a stereotype that's been laid out through many fairy stories, and it's really carried on throughout our society as well.
So why do you think that is? I mean, wicked stepmother. You don't never hear of the wicked stepfather, do you? It's always the stepmother who's the wicked stepmother. Aren't all stepmothers wicked stepmothers? Because
Absolutely
they can't.
not.
Well, is it a perception that your stepmother will be seen as a wicked stepmother because no one can really compare to your real mother in your mind, whether it's a right analogy or wrong?
Well, I don't know. I mean, in terms of no one ever comparing with your mother, because children are the thing about children, and one of the beauties of children is that they're flexible and interchangeable, and time determines how we what we do and how we feel. And for example, like we had one of the teenagers come over during the week, and last week she was saying she can't bear her mum. She can't handle her mother. She's 15. She doesn't want to talk to her mum. Her mum she said her mum talks too much. But being around her stepmother, I'm her stepmother, or one of their stepmothers, and being around me, she doesn't have that kind of feeling. So I'm not necessarily a wicked stepmother at this stage. You go through stages, do you understand me? It's like children go through different stages, and relationships go through stages.
Or could that be because you're not a wicked stepmother because you're not trying to take the position of her mother? Whereas traditionally, the stepmother is actually trying to step into that role and take the position of the mother. Could it be that?
I think possibly to a degree, but then I would have to also look at the person who wrote the books and the person who, because your own attitude comes through in your own fairy story, because you want the scene to be set whichever way you want it to be. And I know England and most countries have had a real disrespect for the female, and so in their disrespect to the female, it's come through within their stories. It's come through in the treatment of the female and the women's rights and with the suffragettes and all different kinds of things. So I would look more at the attitude of the person who wrote the book first. Because it's not fair to generalise and say that all stepmothers are wicked because they're trying to be the mother. No, I am their mother. I am their mother, even by law. And I remember having this discussion with a sister as well, struggling with her, because she was saying that I wasn't there when the child was born. It doesn't matter whether I was there when the child was born or not. It's quite interesting.
Why would you be there?
Exactly, otherwise it would be my child, wouldn't it? But
something wrong would be going on there.
But when we accept the responsibility of being a step parent, we're saying that we're going to do our very best. So we're actually we're changing our attitude and shifting our attitude from one place to another. Say I had like 2 children or something, my attitude has to take a shift to have 3 or 4 or even 5 children, and accept the responsibility of those children and treat them like they're mine, so that they don't see any distinction between the children, just so that they don't feel that they're less than the other children just because they didn't come out of my physical womb. It doesn't mean that they're not a part of me, and it doesn't mean they don't become a part of me and we don't gel as a family. Because it's quite interesting that we say, well, look, you're not her mother and you weren't there when she was born, but as a godparent or as a godmother, you're accepted. As a grandmother, you're accepted. Do you understand what I'm saying? As an adopted mother, we're more accepted. So it's not the children, not a stepmother, Now it's not, and that just goes to show it's not the children, and it's not the attitude of the children so much. It's the attitude of the parents and the foundation that we have to set in order to reunite the family.
Could it be then that the other mother, the biological mother, could be seeding the mindset of the children to see the stepmother as a wicked stepmother? Could it be that then?
Could it? Please.
Ding, ding, ding,
The
ding,
chances
ding.
are, the chances are yes.
Yeah.
You know, we have a lot of issues. You know, we go through a lot of pain and a lot of rejection as women first, okay, as mothers, because we get told many things by the male. Our relationships end up breaking down. We end up not getting along with that person, and that those feelings will then go and affect how we deal with that other person, and sometimes how we deal with that person's partner as well. Because sometimes I know it's very, very difficult, but because we don't see each other and ourselves as a family, we're looking at each other as from division and from a divisive perspective, that it makes us treat one another with frustration and hatred. And if there's anything that children hate, if there's anything that they dislike, is seeing their parents arguing, is seeing their whether it's their biological parents or their step parents arguing and scrapping with one another like we're children. You know, at some point we have to rise above that and, you know, accept the role of a step parent and accept that your child has a step parent. Even the law that we say that we live by, even that law gives me rights as a stepmother. So how dare you then tell me that I have no right or no say or no nothing? It's ridiculous.
So it sounds like the perception of the wicked step parent, it sounds like you're saying it's a sisterhood issue, a lack of sisterhood issue.
A lack of sisterhood, but it's a lack of family, because if brothers treated sisters right initially, and if they treated the women right in the first place, then we wouldn't end up being so bitter and angry and frustrated that we end up taking it out on the other stepmother rather than on the partner himself. Because
I hear what you're saying, but irrespective of whether the relationship breaks down or not, because a relationship, as far as I know, doesn't break down on nice terms or nice things happen to make it break down. There's always something that really, you know, winds up the two people and rubs up the parents, the couple, in the wrong way to make them feel that this has to end. So there's going to be bitter feelings on both sides regardless. But what I'm saying is, when a relationship ends, to then transmit that bitterness into the children, there's got to be a way around doing that. You know, there can't be no justification for doing that in my mind anyway.
I agree, and I think that's part of what we're talking about step. Taking that step, because we talked about shift work, and we talked about shifting our attitudes, but it doesn't stop with shifting the attitude.
You've got to take the step next. Yeah,
with the shifting of the attitude, then we've got to adopt a proper attitude, one of being part of a family, because then what happens is, as a stepmother, you become a part of the family, and as a stepchild, you become a part of the family. And you know, it can be very awkward, because sometimes you have some of the children living with you, other of the children come to you at weekends or what have you, and there's a lot of adjustment that goes on, and that means that it brings a lot of issues, and there are a lot of issues dependent on how many people there are involved as well. So it causes it can cause a lot of issues and a lot of problems. However, that doesn't mean that it's not possible for us to actually make that kind of commitment in order for us to change and refocus and reshift our families and our community back into a balance, rather than us being singletons just living all over the place.